evening, everyone, and welcome back to Carl's Conversations Black Excellence Showcase. And on this particular portion of Carl's Conversations, we take time to showcase the very best of Black America. And there are so many Black Americans who have contributed so much to this nation's building up, to its upkeep, to this nation's defense, to the beauty of the nation and the arts and entertainment, business, healthcare, education. There's just so many wonderful things that Black Americans are doing. And I wanted to take some time and not just do it in February, Black History Month, but all throughout the year. I just wanted to take some time to talk to tremendous Black Americans about the excellent things that they're doing. And so I've said this before in other broadcasts, and I want to take a moment to say it again. I don't want any other culture, race, or anything like that to feel excluded. What I'm doing is just taking from my own and pushing it forward because I do know that there's some who have been blinded by miseducation and some by sheer ignorance to think that we just the bottom of the totem pole. And even some of us have no idea about the tremendous exploits that we have accomplished within ourselves. And I often tell people that you don't have to go to Hollywood, you don't have to go to the big cities, you don't have to do all that to find excellence in our communities. You have excellence right in your phone book, right in your church, right in your community. You may not know that portion of that person. And sometimes we just don't take the time to talk to people. But this particular episode, we have a diamond in the rough, none other than Ms. Dominique Hawkins, nurse practitioner, healthcare professional, and she has such a unique approach to healthcare. I just want to help tell the story. But I'm going to give Dominique a moment to just tell you about herself. Welcome, Dominique. Thank you so much
Okay.
for saying yes to the invitation. And I want you
Thank
to
you
take
for
a
having
moment.
me.
Oh, you are very welcome. I want you to take a moment, even though I have, looked at some of the highlights, but take a moment if you don't mind and tell the audience about who you are and what you do.
So we'll start at I am a GED holder. So let's get that right. So I'm from GED to my current status as a duly certified nurse practitioner in family practice as well as psych. So I pretty much take an approach when it comes to healthcare as a blank slate. So when I see a patient, I listen to a patient, I understand what it is that's bringing them to me in that moment, in that time. What is their emergency? What is their concern? And how can I help them? I always take that as my leading conversation going into that space with patients. I've always done that, and then I have a unique ability because I am blessed with the ability to also see things from an operations standpoint as well. I was blessed with that as well, and I thank God for that because without God, I would not be where I am today.
Well,
And that's
listen,
just what it is.
your story is magnificent. And I just want to make sure people understand this. Uh, Dominique is a healthcare provider who has two specialties. She has a specialty in family practice, but also a specialty in psychiatric care. And I love that because we start to deal with holistic approach to healthcare. And I think that so many times we get sent to so many different doctors who have these specialties, and a lot of things get lost in the cracks. And we need people to be able to look at us holistically. And so I want to know, Dominique, what drew you to doing medicine the way that you do it? Was it past experiences? Was it just as you went along in the profession you got to that? How did you get here?
Well, I've always known that I would be involved in medicine or healthcare since I was young. When I was 10, I used to read old medical books around the house, and that just evolved into becoming a CNA and just kind of following the path that was set before me. I always will tell you, and it's the truth. I follow the path of least resistance because I know that's what God is intending for me to follow. And I've done that for my entire career. I've known that I was going to do this, and I'm thankful that I was able to kind of find my, not the purpose, but my path early. So I knew this was the path I was going to take, and I let that path take me in spaces and places that many people, I would say, even nurse practitioners or psych or even RNs hadn't gone into. So I've let my experiences in different areas of nursing guide my practice as to where I would end up.
So you came into the healthcare profession as a CNA.
Yes, with a
Now,
GP.
can you tell us about that journey, if you don't mind, from CNA to where you are now?
So I was a CNA. I'm from New York, and it's a big deal, obviously, for me to graduate from CNA school. And in fact, when I did have a CNA graduation, my teacher put my name, and he put RN behind my name when I was in CNA school. I still have the pen. He knew that Mr. Westcott knew years and years ago that I was going to go much further than I was. I stayed a CNA for a couple of years, maybe two. Then I went to LPN school. And then I realized as an LPN, hey, I need to be doing RN stuff. So I stayed in LPN for 18 months. And then I went to RN school. And I became an RN in 2011. And then, I would say by 2016, I skipped the BSN and I went from RN to MSN. So I did a accelerated program, 3 years, and I got my master's degree in nursing and organizational leadership. And then I became an FNP. I would say a couple of years after that or so. I stayed at FNP for until 2019. That's when I graduated FNP school. And then recently here, I got a scholarship from the Virginia Healthcare Foundation for current FNPs in the state of Virginia to embark at Liberty University to become a psych NP because we have a shortage in the state of Virginia. So I think they have to date 85 scholarships they've given out to certain universities. I just happened to choose Liberty because I knew Liberty is a very rigorous course load, and I wanted my terminal degree to be from Liberty. I just finished Liberty and recently, and it was a journey. It was definitely a journey.
Some might say your real profession is being a student.
Some might say so. My real profession is listening and following the things I'm supposed to follow, because I always say I'm not doing this for myself. There's somebody that needs me that I haven't met yet, that God has put me in the space to do this. This is a tool that I'll use, for that person when the time comes to encounter them. So they're just tools in the toolbox, and I don't necessarily, I use them all the time anyway in my regular profession. Even when I'm dealing with patients in family practice, I consider that this could be an issue when it comes to psychiatric care, especially when I deal with people of my culture, because sometimes we may not recognize that, or people may not recognize that we may struggle with certain things, and the way we struggle with them may not manifest itself as a truly psych issue. It could manifest as a medical issue in turn. So I'm always mindful of that when I'm taking on patients, and I don't treat every patient literally the same. You start out with a clean slate. We find out what's going on. What are we going to focus on? And we, develop a plan of care from there.
Amazing. Now, I want to ask this question, and it may be a little odd. In your training, of course, you've had much training along with the schooling. As you have learned from different healthcare professionals, do you find that your approach to healthcare when it comes to you and your patients is much different than what you have seen in your training with people who are maybe much senior than you?
Absolutely, because the training, training is what it is. It's training. It's a guideline. It is not the law. It is not you do this exactly this way. When you are training, you are taking in tools and different things that other people have learned, textbooks and things like that. However, I find the training to be very biased. In some of the training, when you become a provider, it'll teach you, this is just recently now, for example, Up until recently, and even some labs are still starting to clear the issue that kidney function was measured by African American kidney function because they thought we had super kidneys. So there's something called GFR. It's a rate of how much your kidneys filter. They would measure it by African American kidneys, and I can pull it up and show you right now what's on the lab. They've had to get out of doing that because they realize we don't have special kidneys. We don't filter faster than anyone else. And because they've done this, a lot of people have ended up in failure, and not being recognized because they had this thought that, hey, your kidneys are filtering super fast, you're good. No, they weren't actually doing that. They were doing it the same ways everyone else's were. And in turn, a lot of people ended up on dialysis. A lot of African American people ended up on dialysis, ended up getting their hypertension treated just a little bit later. That was a concern to me when I see that, because my thought is, if we are a small whatever percentage that they've come up with of the population, why would you measure kidney function by a minority's function? Does that make sense?
Yes,
So
makes a lot
when I
of sense.
look at the bias that exists in healthcare, I just choose not to, practice that way. I don't. I just couldn't. And I just didn't understand why somebody would think that would be okay to look at that and say, hey, they're doing that's the mentality that this country has had ever since 400 years ago. They've experimented on us, obviously, but they've come up with these ideologies that are just not true, and they're ingrained in medicine. And if you're not smart enough, in a sense of, and I don't mean intelligence, I mean understanding that the human body and how it works, that's just not that does not make sense. That's somebody putting their personal opinion and bias into medicine, even in the textbooks.
So, have you noticed that your difference in approach gives you better outcomes with your patients?
Absolutely, there's no question about that.
Hmm.
And that's just not when I take care of patients, I take care of them white, black, orange, purple. I treat all my patients the same. And by the same, I mean, we start off with a clean slate. I don't go in with preconceived notions about a healthcare condition or issue because of race based. I don't. I may go into it with this person lives in in an area that has a factory. 5 of them live in that area. 5 of them have a cough. I'll look at it from that perspective, but never about actually race, unless there is something like for black men, making sure that they get their colonoscopies a little bit sooner, because the research has shown that has to happen because of um, the Black Panther, for instance. Multiple black men that are famous and not famous have died of colon cancer. We know that it's younger. We don't know why, but what we can do is screen sooner.
Right. Wow. That is amazing. Do you find bias even now with other healthcare professionals? And I'm not trying to start mess. We're just having a conversation because I really want to know.
Yes,
Why do you think that is?
because of the way that the textbooks are written and who they're written by. Up until recently, they thought we felt pain different. Black people, they said that we felt pain, we can tolerate a higher level of pain. This is written in textbooks and medical textbooks. That's not true. We have the same pain sensors, nerves, neurons, the things that make people hurt, we hurt. They thought babies didn't have pain sensors either. So they would do circumcisions without, giving pain medicine or giving some type of lidocaine. And that's just a way of thinking. And that's truly ingrained bias, because if you look at the human body like it is, there's no place that says that I have more or less pain receptors than you do. My tolerance might be different, but that's just a personal thing. But that does not mean I don't feel that pain, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It's just amazing. And I'm sure there's some people, this may be their first time even hearing something like this, but it's amazing to know that that type of information was actually in
Right.
medical journals, maybe even being taught in medical school. And we wonder, why so many times people of color experience such bias. Even now in 2026, you still hear stories all the time. Amazing, amazing. Now, you have done something that I think is pretty amazing. A few things. We only can talk about so many in this hour that we have today. But Hemo-Stat Vitamins, you started a vitamin company. Not only started the
Right.
company, but if I understand correctly, you actually created the vitamins. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes. I don't know if I have a bottle in here. But yes, I have the bottle. I have the vitamins downstairs. I created these vitamins because during COVID, a lot of Black women now are starting to have cosmetic surgery. Specifically, they're getting Brazilian butt lifts, they're getting tummy tucks, they're doing things that they have a right to do because it's their body. They can do what they want with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that when I was doing these medical clearances during COVID, I would send them for all the tests and we'll go over all these things. And their hemoglobin, which is the iron parts of the blood that carries iron to tissues and organs. The hemoglobin of Black women, it was just lower than white women of the same age, the same number of children. Just very, and I wondered about that, and I looked it up, and there was no information because nobody studied it. So I just had to take the piece out of it. Let me just take the African American part out. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
So what I discovered is that because Black women, Black people don't get enough vitamin D, Black women especially, we need vitamin D because if we don't have enough vitamin D in your body, then you cannot activate something called transferrin. And transferrin is how you take the iron out of food and supplements and pull it into a usable form to be able to put into tissues and organs so you can breathe better, so your hemoglobin levels can be normal. And that was not happening. There was a disconnect. They were just throwing iron at Black women, but they were not giving them enough vitamin D to sustain. So I created a formula on napkin, and I contacted a company in New York, and we worked together. They're made from here. They're not sourced from China or India. They were made in a factory in New York, and that is how that came about. But that's because I've had so many Black women, in that space with me. They were crying because they couldn't have surgery because their levels were at 10.9. The normal hemoglobin for a woman is like it's 12, 11.5, but I like 12 to 14. And they were not meeting that mark at all. And no matter how much iron they were taking, it was not making it go up. I promise. It was not moving. So I created these vitamins, and then I did my own experiment, which I think I gave 5 or 6 of them bottles, and I told them to take them a certain way. Take them 2 during the cycle at a time, and then take 1 every other day. And I found that their levels did not drop during the cycle because they were maintained with the hemostat. And then after, they shot up pretty quickly within 10 to 12 days.
Wow.
And still to this day, I have the boxes downstairs, and I give a lot of my patients hemostat. I give them out a lot of times. I don't sell them as much. That came with my as a part of my medical clearance business, NP on demand. But I give a lot of people vitamins, and they call me, they email me the testimonials. Just thank you, because this is the only thing that works. But you have to understand how the body works to be able to do that. I just recognize that this particular group of people were not getting enough, but I know why, because we have so much melanin, we're not able to absorb it. And most of the time, environmentally, Black women work a lot. Black men work a lot. They're not able to get enough sun, stand in the sun enough to be able to absorb it enough to be able to kind of, have the whole cycle go through the process, so they're not losing, those precious vitamin levels. And they were. But I definitely corrected that with many women. I have people that still take them. I created them in 2021, still to this day.
Okay, I'm going to nerd out for a moment. It's one thing to hear you say, "I made the vitamin," but I think like an engineer. So I got to understand, right? So how did you do this? I mean, you have to understand chemistry. You have to understand, I guess, biophysics. You got to get some ingredients. You got to have a way to mix it. You got to have a way to make the tablet. How did you do it?
So what I did was I researched, because I also know that there are different types of iron. So ferrous fumarate is the one that I use in Hemo-Stat because I found it to be the most gentle and the easiest to absorb. So not only is Hemo-Stat a good vitamin for that, it also does not make your stomach hurt. It also does not cause constipation. It also is, gentle, and you can take it every day without food. I paid attention to the ingredients and what I wanted to put into it. Also, I looked at a mineral vitamin, MVI, which is a multivitamins with mineral, and I looked and saw what is in this and how can I manipulate this formula to add what I needed to add for us or take things away. Some of the things that were in it, I removed it, and some of the things that I wanted in, I added it. And be mindful that some things are like the molecules are bigger. So they would send it back and say, hey, MP Hawkins, you got to lower this amount of this, because if you don't, it's going to be a bigger pill, or we won't be able to, compact it enough to be able to make it the way you want to. So we had like maybe 2 or 3 iterations of me having to go back and rework the formula that I created. And finally it came out, they emailed me that day and was like, all right, we got the right one. And I coated it in, it's coated in a glycerin, like a vegetable glycerin, like a simple glaze. There's no like, dye or anything like that in it. I didn't want them to be a certain color. I wanted people to see what they were taking. They don't stink. I didn't want it to be like you open the bottle and it's loud, but you got to take it because you feel like it's good for you. No, the vitamins are very, very, they came from the heart. And I will tell you that all the gifts that we have that God gives us, it's for his purpose. And that was a purpose for those women, and not just for that, for the surgery, but just in general. Because like I said, I have women who still take them. I literally have somebody that we kept missing each other. So I'm like, look, I'm going to put it in my mailbox in the Food Line bag. So she ended up coming to pick up her vitamins like that way, because she needed them like so bad. She wanted to continue to take them. And this was just last month.
It seems like I'm having a conversation with a person who is part doctor, part nurse, part chemist, part pharmacist, part is amazing, because I just don't hear practitioners talk like you're talking about the entire scope of healthcare. This is really amazing to me. I work in healthcare, not as a practitioner. Of course, I'm a telecom engineer working in healthcare. But when you're in healthcare, you have an insight that people that don't work in the business, they just don't have it. And it's not a common thing to hear practitioners speak like this. So this is amazing to me. Now, I want to know what was the thought behind the nurse practitioners on demand, this business. Can you tell us what was the thought behind the business? How did it start? What void were you trying to fill?
Well, during the time, it was during COVID. It was 2021, and I was working at the nursing home as a nurse practitioner, seeing patients. And one of the nurses literally said to me one day, she's like, well, I want to ask you something. I'm like, okay. She's like, I think you would be good at doing this right here. And she was like, the reason is because the person that's doing it, she wasn't very nice, in not so many words, or she didn't answer questions, or whatever the thing was. She felt like if she was going to spend her money, she wanted to spend her money with somebody that's going to be knowledgeable, kind, nice, just different reasons. And everybody doesn't get along with everybody. So I didn't look at it as a jab to that particular nurse practitioner. It was just, this person came to me with that and was like, I think you should do this. So she said that to me on July 9th. And by July 12th, I had the business set up. I had the LLC, I had the website, I had the things, I had my first and I made my own website at first. And then she helped kind of get the word out, but I built that from scratch, literally of me reaching out to surgeons, reaching out. And that was in July. By September, I was able to be completely free of working in the nursing home as an NP. And I worked this business for 4 years.
Wow. So who are the people that are contacting nurse practitioners on demand? Who are they, and why are they contacting your business?
So usually, a lot of times sometimes it's about Hemo-Stat. Sometimes it's for medical clearance. Sometimes it's because a lot of times Black women need a break. Black men need a break, and they need FMLA. They need to have a visit because they need to understand how to utilize it, and also when should they take time off. And do I have a certifiable reason to be able to do that? So I do a lot of reprieve too because they need a break. Stress is a real thing. Stress can cause you to have physical symptoms, and I do a lot of explaining in that space as well because it's something it's talked about, but who actually explains if you are able to use it. So different reasons. It could be just for a visit. It could be because they need a nursing school physical. They need labs done. It's kind of like the safety net for people.
Wow. So have you built a network of nurse practitioners, and is it only nurse practitioners, or do you also have MDs and different?
So it's just me.
Okay.
And it has been just me the entire time because I never found a person that was like me for me to feel comfortable enough to trust my patients with them.
Okay.
And I'm not, that's not, and that maybe I didn't pray hard enough, but the purpose that I was put into that from God wasn't for me to take these people and hand them to someone else. It was for me to take care of them. And
Okay.
that's just the task I took on with ease. The patients made it easy because we had to get through I don't trust medical people because just because I look like them, they've been let down by people who look like them, following the status quo, following what this says and not listening to them. So I still had to build that rapport and that relationship with them. And then from there, they'll email me or they'll call me and say, hey, do you do this? They'll ask me first. And then if I don't do something, I'll refer them, or I might start doing it because they asked me to handle that for them. So I didn't feel they trusted me with those places. So I didn't want to hand them off to anyone else.
So if somebody looks at this interview and they say, well, I want Dominique Hawkins to be my primary care practitioner, is that possible? And how would they go about doing that?
Currently, because I do take patients, I don't take them on a long-term basis anymore. It depends on what's going on. So I will take patients on, but I don't do it as much as I used to because of the opportunity that I was provided with currently. For a Fortune 500 company, been looking for a nurse practitioner to start a startup inside of this company with like a $2 million budget, and here's the reins and go. And when I got the position, I actually got it because I was supposed to get it. And I always tell you, least resistance. I didn't even apply for the job that I have currently until after I got it. One of my colleagues, my son and her son does football together, and she dropped my son off, and she's like, "Hey, Jax tells me that you are a nurse practitioner. Your family, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You like primary care?" I was like, "Of course." So she tells me about this opportunity, and she's like, "Oh, send me your resume." So I sent her my resume, and then the VP of the East Coast. He's like it's not even a clinical. He's like the VP over the entire East Coast. Calls me with his kids in the background. We have like this 30-minute conversation, and we just go from there. And once I was hired, he explained to me. He said, "I've been looking for you for a while." He said, "No, I've interviewed." He said, "Probably over 50 or 60 nurse practitioners." He said, "I've been looking for you because I need someone that has an understanding of business and also healthcare, and that can start this startup." And if most people don't know, I did an accelerator with the city of Virginia Beach. I love business. That business is a passion of mine, marketing. And I can do that because I understand the healthcare parts and what makes people want to utilize a service or what makes people turn away from a service. So because I got that opportunity, I haven't been accepting new patients. However, that does not mean if somebody contacts me and they need a blood pressure refill and I can see them for those few minutes and get them a bridge prescription so they can get to their doctor, I will always find a way to help people. I don't usually say no. I usually take on more than I should, actually.
Right.
I don't usually say no, but that I always have to follow what the path I'm supposed to be on, my purpose. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Now, as much as you can, I do want to talk about this new opportunity. I'm not sure how much
Yes.
you can talk about, But as
Yes.
much as you can tell me, what are you doing inside of this business? I know you said startup. I know it's going to be
Right.
something new. Can you tell us about what you're going to be doing?
So I am providing primary care services to people that are on dialysis in the center at the chair side, because they cannot make it to their appointments. They're not able to get quality care because they are having to be somewhere 3 days a week for a large amount of time. So they wanted to impact the patients by making sure that they don't have to go to the hospital as much, making sure that they can get their prescriptions outside of the nephrologist also, and also making sure that they have a place where if something is wrong, they don't have to leave dialysis and go to urgent care or go to the ER. And what was happening was they have PCPs, but they're not able to get to the appointments, or they're listed on the back of the card, but they haven't seen them in 6 months. So I've built up, and this is a from scratch. That means I've surveyed, consented these patients. These patients were not given to me in a, oh, here goes your patient, you go. Oh no, this was from scratch. Hey, Mr. Such and Such, I'm offering this service. Would you like to sign up? Let me tell you some about it. This is for me building this from no patients to, I think we have 70 now.
So this company brought you into an environment where there are people who are having dialysis, and they want to make things easier for them.
Correct.
And you are the solution.
Correct.
Wow. Now, how new is this? Because it seems like your approach is so innovative and unique anyway. How innovative and unique is that particular approach? Were you surprised to see that?
I wasn't surprised to see it because they've done something like this, but it was not in this way. It was more so, the Medicare assessments kind of thing, where they would just get the information from people, and they would make all these phone calls, and they would try to connect the person with their PCP. No, this is new in a sense of, if you need something, I'm writing the prescription. I'm making sure you get that referral to where you need to go. I'm doing those things that those nurse practitioners were not able to do because they are risk adjustment nurse practitioners. They're not PCPs.
Mhm.
So this is new to the company. It is new to the patients. It's new to the centers, and they love it. And it's had an impact already, even though it's so new, because you're making a difference right away.
Amazing, amazing. And I would imagine that this is having great outcomes. You probably are being evaluated and documented
Oh
because
yeah,
if this works, I would imagine it's going to be duplicated in many other places, not just this company.
right.
And
It
so
is. They're trying to do it now, and they want to scale it almost immediately. But I've made sure that we have some things in place, because they get excited. For them, money isn't an issue. You have this ticket of, here's the money, go do the thing, and that's great. However, we need to be mindful that the quality of care is most important than quantity. You don't want to be having all these patients that you can't see. You want to have a close knit relationship. You want them to be able to call. You want them to be able to, if you're in the building, who you're dealing with, the patient's name, those kinds of relationships. So I'm mindful to let them know that although this is nice and it works here, we need to be mindful of those relationships that we build with patients, with the staff, with the nephrologists, so that it can scale, and it can scale, carefully, but also keeping those key points in mind.
great. Now, it's obvious that you see a lot of really, really sick people. But is there any part of your practice uh, that you deal with um, making sure that people that they don't have to see you when they get sick? In other words, preventative
Oh
medicine,
yes.
um, proper diets, and people like me who are finally in my 50s, finally waking up, realize I've been eating
Right.
terrible all my life. You know what I mean? And now I'm looking for all of these. In other words, I heard somebody say something years ago, but I just wasn't at a point where I could really digest what they were saying. And the saying was, you'll either use food as medicine, or medicine will become your food.
Right.
I didn't quite understand it then, but I sure understand it now. And so I'm one of those persons who is looking at every possible way to use what grows out of the ground, and instead of medicine as a way to get my body healthy and keep my body healthy. As a practitioner, do you have any approaches in that vein?
I do, and then we have to realize too, these patients that I'm seeing currently, they are in stage renal. My goal always is to find out what their goal is and to extend their quality of life and make it so that they can have time with their families and do certain things. I'm also mindful that what can they eat? You know, what can you eat that makes, because at the same time, food is a part of our culture, and a lot of the patients are like us. They are a lot of African American patients on dialysis, and obviously you know why. Part of it is because of that GFR thing. Um, Education is important for the patients as far as, you know, phosphorus and making sure that you can have certain foods, but let's rinse it off. Let's figure out how we can let you eat what you want, and not what you want, but eat within certain parameters so that you don't make yourself sicker, because
Hmm.
food can make you get sicker, especially for patients that are on dialysis. So finding out what they have, because there's this thing with dietitians and nutritionists, sometimes they have these wonderful organics and things, and but that's not what my people can do. So
Uh,
if you have canned beans, let's rinse them off 3 times, 4 times. Let's portion them out. Let's find out which ones have low phosphorus. Let's find out where you can get fresh, you know, where you can get fresh salmon and fresh meat from. There are certain places in Virginia Beach, especially churches that get good donations, and they give steaks out. They give out ground beef. They give out things that people would not normally have. I try to stay away from recommending places that give junk food, like a lot of starches and stuff like that. So it's also being mindful of the community and what community resources are around, so that these patients are able to have a quality of life and also eat certain things that are connected with our culture and not make themselves get sicker. Medications are important, but I will tell you, a lot of my patients are not on a lot of medications, because once you get to that point, they're usually on blood pressure medications, a couple. They take them every other day. There's very regimented on how they take their medication. And then I try to combine things if I can. But I also listen to the patient. What is the patient's goal? What do they want? What does that look like for them? Are they okay with taking this? Do they not? Does something make them feel bad? It's a lot of things that go into holistic care with patients. And also, because I'm also duly certified, I do depression screenings on them. As I'm doing my daily things with them, I'm making sure, are you sad? And I don't mean just sad outside of this. One of my patients actually was sad, but he also had financial issues because he was on Social Security. They weren't giving him enough. So I wrote a letter to the American Kidney Foundation outlining his condition with his permission, and they were able to give him an extra $400 a month. We just got the approval letter 2 days ago. Well, Friday.
wow, this is amazing. Do you have any future plans on getting your medical degree?
No, I love being a nurse practitioner, and I think the path that was carved out for me, in a sense, that's the path I'm supposed to be on. I don't think me going to school more is going to change the way I impact people or the way I know and learn. I don't think that'll help. I don't think that'll do that. I feel like it'll take me away from my purpose, because I'm able to impact people now. And if I go back to school, I'll be in residency. I'll be doing that. If that's what God's plan is, absolutely. But I do feel like I'm in the place I'm supposed to be with the people I'm supposed to be with.
Got it. Got it. So this is 2026 and 2036. What does Dominique Hawkins look like?
Ah, more than likely, I will either be the vice president of clinical operations and still see patients, or it'll be some type of combination of business and healthcare.
Mhm.
It would be a combination of that, also making sure that we have quality care and focusing probably on a special group. It may be dialysis patients, it may be something different. But I'm mindful of opportunities, but I'm mindful of when it's time to make a move and when it's time to sit still. I wanted to move around at a point last year, and God said, sit still. And I mean, it wasn't, I didn't even want to stay there. I just heard that voice, be still, stay right where you are. Because going to school, you have all these things, you need to sit still. And when it was time, and I said that multiple times, when it's time for me to leave here, I will have a place to go. And when it was time for me to leave, that black truck pulled up in front of the house, send me your resume. And I followed that. I learned that as a Christian, people will tell you what anything worth having is worth fighting for, but that doesn't apply to us because God says He'll give you desires of your heart. So why would we have to fight for something? If you're fighting for something, that's not usually for you. And I've had to learn, and I learned that at a younger age, and I'm thankful that I did because when I was younger, I would be like, I want that job, and then you didn't get it, and you don't realize what you were being protected from. So I
Mm,
learned to follow the path of least resistance. Like I always say, I'm water because that's God to me. Is that something that's easy? And then people may not look at it that way. Not easy in obtaining because I went to school. I had, things I had to do, things in the way that I don't mean easy in the sense of obtaining. I mean, when it comes to following the path of where you're supposed to go, those things for Christians are not hard because we're not taught that they're hard.
I appreciate you saying that. That's good stuff. Now, how do you find balance? You have this tremendously demanding but very rewarding career. You're a mom. You're also a constant learner, and that takes a lot of time. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm wondering when does she sleep? So, how do you strike the balance in your life between all the things that you have going on?
I think I listen to my body. I mean, if I need to relax, I relax. If I need to read, I read. If I need to write, I write. I don't. There are times when, things are like, all right, I got to get certain stuff done. But I truly feel like when you are within God's will, things feel balanced to you. There's not this crazy chaos to me. And I keep bringing up God because it's important that people understand I did not get this place without Him. I had a baby when I was 14. My daughter is 26 years old. I have 3 grandchildren. I did not make it here without having God. So when it comes to, yes, I've done this, and then God will be like, no, you're going to go right back where you're at because I need you to follow where I need you to follow. So this is not a glorified uh, path or a glorified story. It has rough edges, rough ends, a lot of rejection. It has a lot of those things. But all those things made me who I am today. And I had to learn that God's protection exists within His plan. So if I go outside of that, that's when things start to get unbalanced. That's when a little bit of things start to move in a certain way. But if you're in the path you're supposed to be on, then you should find balance. Balance, peace should come to you. I don't feel unpeaceful when I have a lot of things to do anymore because I feel like I'm following the path I'm supposed to. And I always remind myself that what I'm doing is not for me. It is for somebody. I may have not met them yet. I may have not impacted them yet, but that is for them, not me.
I'm so glad that you're sharing that part of your story because you're encouraging someone. So many young women, especially after having becoming parents at a very young age, have been thrown away. I'm sure you know they have been discounted, feel
Right.
like that's it. But you have done a tremendous amount of overcoming, overachieving, I would say, and being an example along the way. And I'm so glad that you're sharing that. Now, you're talking my kind of talk. You're talking about your faith. What role would you say that your faith as a Christian has played in the way that you see medicine, in the way that you approach your patients, and even in the way that you build your business?
I think that as I said before, I remind myself that my gifts that I was blessed with are for that purpose. They're not for me. And people should understand that God blesses us with gifts and talents, and the talents you might be able to use to go and find a career or make money or whatever. But the gifts that you have should be used in a way that are protecting and taking care of God's people, and that's just what I do. And that includes people that don't like what I look. Don't like me because of the color of my skin. That includes people who don't want a black nurse. though that includes a lot of different things. But I'm mindful that that is, as a Christian, that's my purpose, is to, forgive and go in with the clean slate, go in with the open heart, go in with, you know, I might change someone's mind about God, about what does it look like to be a Christian, because I don't have a perfect story. Some people may think that, oh, you have all of these things. I definitely took the stairs while they were balls getting thrown down it, and blocks, tripping up the steps and falling up the steps. I took the steps to success. And a big part of it is because I recognize that God was the pushing, the catalyst to where I was going. I had to understand that. And I just make sure I align myself with people that are like that as well. I don't tend to stray away from that. And when I find myself getting to a point of, and I pray, I'm not a perfect prayer. I'm still learning how to pray correctly. I'm still learning how to navigate things correctly. I struggle with things sometimes, all the time. But those are the parts that make us human. The part that makes me Christian makes me understand that, I accepted Jesus and as my Lord and Savior, and I know that life it'll be okay. Things will be okay. If I pray, if I do the right thing, if I have the right heart about it, I'm going to end up the place I'm supposed to be at. And if I'm supposed to impact people, like I said, on my way, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't feel purposeless. I don't feel like I didn't have it. I'm blessed because I've known since I was young that I was going to be in healthcare. And I'm thankful for that.
You must have had a tremendous support team along the way. Becoming a mom at 14, you said you were a GED, so that was a journey. Getting into school, completing, being a CNA, and then taking the journey to the RN portion. There had to be some support along the way. So for that young lady who maybe is in the shoes that you were in maybe 25, 30 years ago, what can you say to her about that support system?
What I can say is that I've always, it was just something different. And I knew that I had to do certain things. I had this fight in me that I knew that this is something that's not going to be a roadblock to me. I knew that I was going to be either a medical examiner, forensics. I knew that I was going to be doing in something. So I kept that at the front, the forefront of my mind. And this is even before. God always knows what you're going to do before you do it. This is before I was like, all right, I'm going to go do that. That's where I'm going to go. I just had to understand that that wasn't the end of my story. I didn't have any more children until I was married, until I was older, but I had to also be mindful that my daughter was supposed to be here. That was my free will, yes, but at the end of the day, she has a purpose in life as well, and I couldn't imagine life without her. So I made sure that I did those things. I kept that, and I did not get my dad. I will tell you, because he's here. He praying father, a minister. My dad writes books. Actually, he has a lot of books that he sends me all the time about, my journey, about being a Christian, about workbooks that he's written himself. He had a story, and I pulled from those things too to make sure that I'm on, the right path. Like, that's it. And that my dad, my mom, it wasn't perfect. But it wasn't, but I've made it.
And this is amazing. It's amazing. Now, I can't. You said something about being a VP, and that sounds real good.
Right.
But you have such an entrepreneurial spirit. I just imagine that wheel probably doesn't stop turning.
Right.
Can you let us know? Is there a business venture in the wheelhouse?
I don't know yet. I've done, and I don't often stop and say, you did that. I don't do that. I usually just keep steamrolling and like, all right, well, we'll move on to the next thing. I can't tell you what that is, but I will tell you that I'm always open for something like that. And even with this startup that I'm doing now, That is something to be said, about putting this, on your resume, and you started this from scratch, essentially. Even the people that I'm speaking to, VPs and, the president, the CEO of certain spaces, the information that I have, they don't have. I share things sometimes, and they're like, "How do you come up with that?" I'm like, it's there. I'm blessed with that. So if it's my purpose to be a business owner again, and I don't mean just because I'm already a business owner, entrepreneur, but if there's an opportunity that I'm supposed to partake in, and it comes the right way and it's the right thing, I'll absolutely go for it. And it's not just that, but also people may ask me for advice about business, and I will gladly give it to them. And I don't know where that comes from. I know it's just a blessing that I have, that I'm able to see things differently than other people, and being able to marry operations and clinical and leadership together is something that I'm so thankful that I have, especially going into some of the spaces that I go into, because it allows me to be an advocate for patients as well. It allows me to get monies put into certain things, especially what I'm doing now. It allows me to foresee certain things, and because I have a lot of the times I have the ear of my my boss, he's important. He's like, "What do you think, Dominique?" And I'll let him know, and then next thing I know, that thing is being put in motion. I don't need the credit from it, in a sense. I just want it to be put in motion because I know it's going to have a positive effect on my patients.
Amazing. I feel like I could talk to you all night, but we just ain't gonna do it. So as we begin to wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity. Maybe there's something that I did not ask you, that maybe something on your heart that you want to pour out to the audience. I just want to give you the microphone, and however the Lord's going to use you, whatever you want to say, just however you want to address the audience.
I will tell you that if you haven't accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and you're struggling with that, just know there is no right time to do it, because even when you do, you'll still struggle with certain things. You will still, and I don't mean as far as just in life, you still will, but you'll have that covering. You'll have that comfort knowing that you have this ultimate support. And even when I even find myself sometimes, in your thoughts, in your ways, and how you are, we don't change overnight. It's a process that happens. If you're on the fence about it, I would tell you to do it. And don't just do it just because I'm telling you to. I'm showing you that this is a journey, it's a story. This is only pieces of my story. And I'm so thankful, to Carl, for having me to explain that, from being a teenage mother of 14. I almost died having my daughter. I had to be resuscitated and intubated. And I'm sitting here today to tell you this story about this young girl who's come from a GED all the way to a master's degree. So I'm thankful, and I'm so thankful for the opportunities that I've had. But if you're struggling with that, please, I would say take the step, because even though you may find yourself feeling like you have to be a perfect Christian, you got to be a perfect. There's no perfection in that. There's no perfect Christian. Only perfect Christian is Jesus. Honestly, I don't think Jesus was Christian. I think he was Jewish. But I will tell you that that is a big part of why I wanted to do this, and I didn't want to. I didn't have anything prepared to say. I didn't have a testimony ready, as far as that's concerned. But I am a living, walking testimony for my life and the things that I've been through and the place that I am right now. And I'm just thankful for being up here with you, Carl. I'm thankful for you and for Tim. I don't know if Tim was watching. My dad is watching. Hi, Dad. But I appreciate the platform as well that you give to people that are considered Black excellence. We all of us are in our own right, regardless of this. And I'm thankful actually to sit here and to hear the things I've done, because I never usually sit and like review them. I just keep going.
And that's amazing. And I'm telling you right now, I find it amazing that a woman of the level of your accomplishments and this tremendously diverse journey that you've been on, when I ask you to pour out, the thing that you mentioned is your relationship with Christ and to reach out to somebody and offer Christ to them. I think that is very humbling, and it speaks to who you are. And if anybody's wondering how in the world have you had so much success, I would say to them, refer back to her faith. And I'm glad that you painted a very transparent picture, because you have said several times it has not been easy. You're not perfect. You make mistakes, and it's just real life. And I really appreciate that. Sometimes we try to paint a picture that's so rosy, but it's not helpful because it's not realistic. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm very
would it be the truth if I did that?
Well, everybody don't love the truth, Dominique. And that was heartbreaking to me when I found out that people really don't love the truth, especially folks who call themselves Christians. Man, I had to really grow in that area to be able to stomach some of that. But I'm very thankful once again that you said yes, and that you come to share your story here now. This has been so good to me. This cannot be the last time that we do this. I understand how busy you are. We'll give the audience a little breather, but we're going to have to do this again before 2026 escapes us. All right?
Anytime you ask, Carl, I'll be happy to join your conversations, and we can just have a different topic, and maybe questions from the audience. If somebody's struggling with something or needs some type of advice that I can offer them from my own experience, I absolutely would be willing to, have questions with Carl. See, here goes another business idea.
There you go. And I'm gonna tell you something too. I was asked by one of the audience members. This was several weeks ago. He says, "Man, can you please do something about Black men and mental health?" And so I have reached out to a couple of healthcare professionals and other people, because I want many different perspectives. I'm gonna put a panel together. I'm gonna put a show together, and I want to address that. And I was gonna talk to you about it in private, but since we are already on.
I'll absolutely I'll join it, but we also can have a conversation about Black women and how we struggle with ADHD, but we look at it, because I have it, and we look at it as being super women and being able to multitask. But some of that is rooted in your, what's going on with your mental health. And Christians, we're not perfect, and God doesn't tell us not to take medicine or do things. It is a mindset. We're here to get help. We're here to be able to be mentally healthy and sound, so that we can in turn help others. So I will absolutely love to be on that panel.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be contacting you soon.
Okay.
Dominique, I want to thank you again. You are a tremendous example of not only Black excellence, but who you are fits the mode of excellence anywhere, for any people in any nation, any culture, any color, any country. And I mean that. And I'm not blowing smoke. I mean that. I'm very intentional on who I invite, because I believe that this is serious. I believe that there's somebody somewhere who hears these stories, and they're just on the tip of getting to that place called there, but they're just missing a little something. And it takes people like you telling their story to help them to recognize that little something that they're missing to get to the place called there. And so I really appreciate your humility and your time. Thank you.
I appreciate you all, and thank you guys for having me, and you have a blessed night.
All right. God bless you. Well, listen, y'all, this is Carl's Conversations, and this is the Black Excellence Showcase. You may be out there, and maybe you may qualify for being on the Black Excellence Showcase, or maybe you qualify for being on one of my other panels. But if you have an interesting story, remember, Carl's Conversations is the safe place to have difficult conversations. So if you have an interesting story and you want to put it on Carl's Conversations, contact me and we'll work it out. All right. Until next time, for Dominique Hawkins, nurse practitioner extraordinaire, I am Carl Armstrong of Carl's Conversations. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Good night for now.
Good night.
Bye-bye, y'all.